So we've been a brewery for about 8 or 9 years in Aberdeenshire. Maybe just over 2.5, 3 years ago, we hired Liam Pennycook, who actually works for, or used to work for Strathern Distillery down outside Perth. And he was helping create a lot of different rums, a lot of different gins and whiskies and stuff. So when we put the fish hook into his mouth to come and join us, we basically said, do you want to create your own rum? That's his category. That's what he loves. He just loves rum. It's his kind of spirit. And said, you can put your name on the bottle and we can work together to produce whatever you want. And we came up with Devil's Point. So because we were a brewery and a distillery, we kind of wanted to do everything from start to finish, just like you said at the start. It was starting with something as a base product and ending up with bevy in a glass. So we start with molasses. We do our own fermentation, which takes just up to about 2 weeks. And we keep it in a heated tank. So we can keep it at constant temperature and make it as funky as possible, if you like. Everything that's left in the still is slight residual sugars, got lots of flavor. So we want to use that, and this is what dunder and muck is. So if we let it ferment, there's things called esters, and esters are a natural compound from fermentation. You get CO2, alcohol, and esters are a kind of byproduct, if you like, and that adds to the funk. So if you have beer, for instance, which you might be more used to or people more access to, you get that kind of funky, yeasty flavor. It's things that you get with like sourdoughs, for instance. So we wanted to capture that, and we add 20% of this secondary fermented dunder pit to each batch of our distillations. So that's why when you've got our Devil's Point in your glass and you give it a smell, the aim is to be smelling, for me anyway, and just as Peter said, it's all about what you taste, not so much what I taste. And if you want to say it smells like, I don't know, a bacon sarnie, that's up to you. But hopefully you smell a bit of funk. And again, funk's a really hard word to describe. And again, if you're into kind of heavy rums, Appleton Estates, Ray and Nephew, maybe some Agricoles, they've got some pretty heavy funk on them. We'll hope you'll smell it. We do have a dunder pit, Jazz. It's pretty crude. It's not as crude as some crazy Jamaican dunder pits, but it's basically an open top IBC, a 1,000-litre tank. We put all the stillage into it. It's been open top, nothing covering it, fermenting away outside in the rain, in the sun, for just up to about 2 years now. And we take 20% out, add it to each distillation, and when we're finished distillation, we add the 20% of the stillage back into the dunder pit. So it's a constant cycle, which is good. It's kind of like our own yeast strain, if you like. It's our own flavor compound in yeast. So we hope you can smell it. Almost like an undescribable taste, if you like. Does it freeze in the winter? Not so much. As much as it gets cold out here, it's not cold enough to freeze 1,000 litres of sugary liquid, but slightly sugary liquid. But we do just kind of leave it unattended, the way it should be. If you look at pictures of dunder pits in Jamaica, they are super gnarly. Like you don't want to try them. And I was debating taking a wee jar of our dunder pit, so you can see it. It just looks like muddy pond water, so it's not the best descriptor of flavor, if you like. But we hope you can smell it. And this was a decision between the whole team at Deeside and Devil's Point, but Liam Pennycook was the one that's actually distilling it and producing it. So it's all him making it, but we work together to kind of decide the flavor profiles and where we want the direction of the rum to go. So this golden age that we've got, this is a 38%. It's aimed to be usable. I really like it with ginger ale as a highball or in something short just with ice and chill. Depends on the time of day, I suppose. But the color, which you'll see in your glass, is completely natural. So there's no caramel coloring, there's no sugar added. This is a relatively dry rum. It's not intended to be sweet and chewy and spiced or anything like that. This is molasses, dunder, fermentation and distillation, and then it's plopped into American oak barrels. When you go to like single malt whiskey distilleries and such, you'll see 250-litre hoggies or butts, some massive sherry barrels. Now we actually use a 50-litre octave. So if I had one here, you could basically sit it on my lap. It's not huge, only holds 50 litres. And it's also a Virgin American oak cask. So with Virgin American oak, you've got North American white oak, Quercus alba, and that's air dried, it's charred, and then it's sent to us. Normally with American oak, you'd be getting use in bourbon, or you'd be sending it away for cognac and things like that, and then sent to us. But because it's virgin barrels, it's full of sap, full of tannins, full of flavors, and we just want to pull that out, similar to the use of bourbons and ryes and stuff like that in the States before we get the barrels for a single malt. So these little barrels, now the flavor that they can introduce is wild. Compared to a 250 litre barrel, you've got more contact from liquid to wood, which in turn gives you way more flavor per annum, if you like. So this bottle here, which is natural color, age-wise, if you look at something of that color, I would always be assuming it's something like a 8 to a 12-year-old whiskey. In here is a mixture of barrels from 8 months old up to about just over 1 year old. So it's an average out. And this is a blend of barrels in batch 2. I think we're on to now. Yeah, batch 2. So age-wise, it's crazy. So the flavor, the character of the barrel, the char, the toast just melds really well with the fermentation and the molasses flavor. And the reason for doing it so young in age is so we don't mask the flavor of the fermentation. We really want to balance it out. We really want to have that grassiness, that funk, that molasses, that burnt sugar, the almost like eucalyptus flavor from the rum, mixed with the caramel, the spice, the tannins, if you like, from the wood. So we hope you can taste it. Are we getting that across the board? Do people taste that or smell it or whatever you think you smell? The strength as well. The strength is at 38%. So it is on the bottom point of ABV. That's intentional. It's not just trying to squeeze as much out as we can. For the flavor profile, we do have single cask varieties, which are up at, this one is 59% ABV. This is cask strength, 1 barrel chosen, bottled. They're there to be the kind of big boy, punchy, one of these little glasses, you know, get the nose in, all that. But for the golden age, the one that you're trying right now, is there to be used. You know, we want it to be a product that can tick many, many boxes. Whether you're chilling in the sun, feet up, cap on, that's nice if you want to sit in front of the fireplace in an evening, bit of ice, bit of peel, make an old fashioned, make Manhattans, make Sazeracs with it, things like that. It works really, really well. And that's why we think we have a good team at work. We're very proud of our team. We have Liam, who's been an award-winning distiller. He's a young lad. He's like 26 or 27. It was his birthday like 2 weeks ago. And he's killing it in the game of distilling and just doing interesting things. You know, we're not trying to bring too much tradition in as we can. We kind of want to tick boxes of tradition and doing interesting things like coffee rum liqueurs. We have a sherry cask, single cask. We have a single cask American oak as well as our golden aged. My background is bartending and working with different rum brands. As Peter said at the start, we met quite a few years ago at a rum tiki competition that we do in Aberdeen every year. And it gets pretty loose. But I love the idea of rum being used in many, many ways, hence why this is 38% and usable. The smoke is quite interesting. So for me, the smoke comes from the molasses because it's a byproduct of cooking and condensing sugar down to white sugar. Like crystallized, you're left with the molasses as a byproduct. So it's burnt, it's toasty, it's very like treacle, if you like little red Tate and Lyle jars. You get a real toastiness to it. But also because the barrels are fresh wood, they're charred to around about grade 3 to grade 4. So the charring goes from 0 to 7. And normally, like things like Ardbeg Alligator, that's up at a 7 grade char, so really, really charry. Ours is done between 3 and 4. So it gets a nice bit of char. And because there's no liquid taking the flavor from the char out, the liquid's hitting that char and it's just taking that little touch of smokiness to it. But it's very subtle. And I think it works really well with the funkiness, if you like. Which is good. Oh, Aidan Patterson, you tried our coffee rum liqueur. Amazing. Yeah, we're very happy with it. Don't know if we should be talking about the other ones when you don't have it in a glass. But we use a local coffee roaster out in Ballater, at the other end of the Royal Deeside. We get their coffee, we do a big steep with coffee, we blend it again with the rum, and then we spike it with molasses and a bit of like plain sugar. So it's nice and simple. Which is good. Great with ginger and lime, that's good to hear. I'm a big fan of ginger ale. Again, me and Peter were talking, we mentioned this yesterday when we spoke. I I'm a huge fan of ginger ale. I think it makes every drink amazing. And ginger ale doesn't try and mask flavors, or not mask flavors, but build on flavors too much. I think it's nice and clean. It's fresh. It keeps clarity as well, which I don't know if it's just bartender in me in a way. I like the clarity of a drink. I like when you can see the ice in it and things like that. I think it makes it feel fresher, makes it brighter, makes it more vibrant. Do we sell in the Netherlands? No, but we do sell on Master Malt website, and they'll be able to punt you some. I think the sherry cask and this one are super different, mainly ABV wise. I think the sherry cask being 59%. We did have another one which was 60. Because they're only 50-litre barrels, we only get 70 bottles out of each barrel, so they're super scarce. We've got one of each, or 5 of each at the distillery, just to keep each batch. The Golden Age is one that I drink way more of, and the sherry cask is something more for when you're sitting chilling, you know, like when wintertime, got the log burner on, feet up, slaying a season of Stranger Things or something. And I think it's very good for that. It's way more sippable and kind of try to figure out what's going on in the rum rather than maybe just something accessible, something you can do whatever you want with it without feeling too harsh out about it. And we are in a tiny little farm estate, just on like the cusp of Royal Deeside, if you like. Now, when I say farm distillery, it's about as legit as a farm distillery as you can get. So one large steading split into 2. One of the halves is a distillery. So we have 2 stills, we have 8 fermentation tanks, we have 1 mash tun and 2 heaters, so like 1 kettle and 1 hot liquor tank. In the other one is where we keep all of our barrels, and we've got about 90 odd 250-litre barrels, which are actually holding our whiskey at the minute, and we have about another 35 to 40 of our 50-litre casks, which are all holding rum, and a mixture of other things, some rye and some fun things I'm not really allowed to talk about. But when I say farm estate, it is legit farm estate. The steading next to us is a Highland cattle farm. We have chickens cutting about, there's farm cats, there's Highland cattle wandering around all the time, and we're surrounded by fields of barley, cattle, and wheat. It's a stunning place. Sadly, we don't really do tours because we're too small for it. In a way, it's very cramped. We're pushing a lot of liquid out between our rum, our gin, our whiskey, and our beer when we do it. But it's a pretty sweet place to come, and if you ever come past, if you ever do come to Deeside, noise us up. We can maybe let you come and have a lookie, but you'll be one of the few if you do. But it's nice to kind of come and see a Scottish distillery producing start to finish molasses forward and have a bright ginger Highland cow at the front door. I think that's quite good. When did we start producing? So we started making Devil's Point 2 and a bit years ago. Just by doing small batches, you start with 1 IBC of molasses, which equals maybe 4 or 5 fermentations, or maybe 6 or 7 fermentations. And then you quickly progress into having, I think we have like 8 or 9 IBCs on at the moment, fermenting, just so we can produce enough rum, which is important. Like we want to keep producing stuff which is not always the same. It's not so much about repetition. Yes, the golden rum will be, but it's still batches. It's still batch kind of blended, if you like, because this is a mixture of barrels. But the other ones, the single casks, they're going to be very unique again because there's only 70 bottles per batch. It's scarce and hard to come by, and we have to pick the barrels right. We've got a few barrels which we haven't tapped, which are 1.5 to 2 years old, because they're too influenced by the barrel. And again, this is getting back to that balance. There's no point in putting all the effort into the dunder pit, that kind of funky, gnarly fermentation, as well as our long heated fermentation on plain molasses to get this real ester forward, funky, grassy, gnarly nose and palate, if we're just going to chuck it into a barrel and the barrel takes over. And then it starts getting into the realm of whiskey-like, cognac-like, but we want it to be very recognizable as rum. So I really hope you guys can taste it. Where did the name come from? All right. So the name, Devil's Point. There's always a touchy subject to bring up. So Devil's Point is an area. It's a hill or mountain in the Cairngorms. In Gaelic, I mean it's Bod Damon. And back in the day, the gilly of the Cairngorm estate at Devil's Point and it was actually called the Devil's Manhood, shall we say? And it was always known that it's very steep, very tall. You'll see the shape of it on the front of the bottle. This guy going, and Queen Victoria came for a nosy about, and obviously the Gilly couldn't say the Devil's Manhood, so he turned it to the Devil's Point, and that's what it got stuck with. So if you Google Devil's Point, as in the Cairngorm Mountains, you'll see the Devil's Point or the Devil's Penis, if you like. And we love the name. The Cairngorm Estates aren't hella far away, you know, they're not super far away. And when we're thinking of rum always has this connotation to like devils and spiritual and dark and mysterious and things like that. And I love that about it. I love that it's the mysterious side is almost more interesting. I think it's that kind of unknown. You don't know a lot about rum. I've been to South America. I visited Florida Canyon Distillery in Nicaragua, and you don't actually see their distillery. You see the barrel housing, you see the rick house, you get to see the horrendous temperatures inside of the warehouses, which is rad. I had a great time, but you don't see the distillery, because it's far away in a tiny little area. And for us, the Devil's Point was something pretty cool. I had a bit of fun with the name, you know, kind of covering up the names and stuff to not stress the Queen out. But did you say it? Yes, I did. Edinburgh Rum Club. I kind of wish I didn't have to, but yeah. Where do we get our molasses? So, funnily enough, it's South American origin. We've been guaranteed. We get it from a company outside Glasgow, who source it from South America. They bring it to Glasgow, and then we buy it from them. And it comes through. It's always the same batches, the same viscosity and sugar content, things like that. And so we get a consistent product. Again, consistency is key when it comes to something like the blend. And again, the single cask ones, it's not so much. We look for the inconsistencies, for sure. We do, once we have our molasses, as I said, we ferment it for 14 days in heated tanks, which creates that ester forward big flavor profile. We distill it on something called an ice still, and I'm pretty sure there's quite a few that you'll see today that are using ice stills. Again, when I went on my little 10-day distillation course to the Netherlands, it was with the company ice still, and this is a modern way of distillation. If you imagine old school traditional distillation, copper pot still, big round copper pot, the vapors come up, they recondense over the swan neck, and then become a liquid again through a cooling condenser or cooling vat. Now, the ice still does exactly the same, but it's slightly more modern, and as you can probably guess from it being called ice still, it's got an iPad involved. There's no worry about temperature valves and pressures and everything. It's all looked after for us, and again, this is for consistency. So it is stainless steel on the outside, it's coated in neoprene, so you get a nice kind of heat insulation, so it keeps the temperatures regular, if you like, depending on the temperature outside. But with this ice still, we can create a very consistent product. There is copper on the inside, don't stress, it's definitely still getting copper content to take out sulfuric notes and bad tannins, but it creates a very consistent product.